The diplomatic vessel Horizon's Edge dropped out of faster-than-light travel and entered the orbit of the Zenturi homeworld. Inside the ship, 8 human Marines stood in formation, while Ambassador Jack Holloway adjusted his formal uniform for the 10th time. "Stop fidgeting," Commander Lisa Barrett said without looking at him. "They can smell fear." "They can actually smell fear?" Holloway asked, his face going pale. "No, but they can see you shaking from across the room." At the back of the Marine formation stood Ethan Cole, at 22 years old. He was the youngest member of the security team. He was not the strongest or the most experienced, but he had scored highest in adaptive thinking during his training, and Commander Barrett had personally requested him for this mission. Ethan looked out the viewport at the planet below. The Zenturi homeworld was beautiful in a dangerous way. Red continents spread across the surface like wounds, and massive storms swirled over the oceans. Everything about this species was intense, powerful, and ancient. The Zenturi had built an empire when humans were still living in caves. They lived for 500 years or more. They stood 8 feet tall with skin like polished stone and eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. To them, humans were insects. Brief, fragile, and unimportant. But 6 months ago, a human fleet had defeated the Corvani raiders in a battle that shocked the entire galaxy. The Corvani had terrorized dozens of species for centuries. Humans destroyed them in 3 hours. Now the Zenturi were curious. The shuttle descended through the atmosphere and landed in the capital city. Ethan followed his commander down the ramp and got his first look at Throne City. Towers of black metal rose into the orange sky. The architecture was harsh and angular, built to show strength rather than beauty. Thousands of Zenturi lined the streets, watching the human delegation with expressions that ranged from curiosity to disgust. Ethan kept his face neutral and his hands visible. He had studied their culture during the journey. Any sign of weakness would be remembered. Any sign of aggression would be punished. The Imperial Palace sat at the center of the city like a mountain made by hands. Armed guards stood at every entrance, each one carrying weapons that could cut a human in half with a single swing. Inside the throne room, Emperor Genthus waited on a seat carved from a single piece of dark crystal. He was enormous even by Zenturi standards. His body covered in old scars that told the story of a warrior who had conquered his way to power. Beside him sat his daughter. Princess Valeria Genthus was over 400 years old, but her face was smooth and ageless. Her skin was lighter than her father's, almost silver in the torchlight. Her eyes were the color of deep water, and they moved across the human delegation with cold interest. She had refused every suitor from every species for 3 centuries. Wars had been fought over her hand. She had watched them all with the same bored expression she wore now. Ambassador Holloway stepped forward and bowed. "Great Emperor, we come in peace to discuss an alliance between Earth and the Zenturi Empire." The Emperor did not respond for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was like stones grinding together. "You are small. You are weak. You live for less than a century. Why should we ally with creatures who will be dust before my daughter finishes her morning meal?" Holloway had prepared for this. "Because we defeated the Corvani, Your Majesty. We did what no other species could do." "Luck," the Emperor said. "Nothing more." The formal reception continued for hours. Food was served that humans could not eat. Drinks were offered that would have killed them. The Zenturi nobles watched the humans struggle with everything and whispered among themselves. Ethan stood at his post near the entrance, watching the room. He noticed how the Zenturi moved, how they communicated with small gestures and shifts in posture. He noticed how the servants kept their eyes down and how the nobles kept their hands near their weapons, even at a peaceful gathering. He also noticed the child, a young Zenturi, no more than 10 years old by their standards, had wandered away from his father. The boy was curious about the ceremonial beast chained near the far wall. It was a massive creature with 6 legs and a mouthful of teeth. The Zenturi kept them as symbols of power. The beast was agitated. Too many strangers, too much noise. Its chain rattled as it shifted its weight. The child reached out to touch it. Ethan moved before he realized what he was doing. He crossed the distance in seconds, placing himself between the child and the beast just as it lunged forward. The chain caught it, but barely. Its jaws snapped shut inches from Ethan's face. He did not flinch. Instead, he turned slowly and faced the creature. He kept his movements calm and steady. He made no sudden motions. He breathed slowly and let the beast see that he was not a threat. The creature's growling faded. Its muscles relaxed. It settled back onto the floor and watched Ethan with something like confusion. Ethan turned and knelt beside the child. "Are you okay?" The boy nodded, his eyes wide. A Zenturi noble rushed forward and grabbed the child away. "How dare you touch my son, human?" he roared. "You have no right to lay hands on Zenturi royalty." Commander Barrett was at Ethan's side in an instant, her hand on her weapon. The room went silent. Every Zenturi guard reached for their blade. "Peace," a voice said. Everyone turned. Princess Valeria had risen from her throne. She descended the steps slowly, her gaze fixed on Ethan. She stopped in front of him and studied his face as if seeing something she had never seen before. "He saved your son," she said to the noble. "That beast would have killed the child before you could reach him. This human moved faster than any of you." The noble sputtered but said nothing. Valeria looked at Ethan again. "What is your name, young human?" "Ethan Cole, your highness." "Why did you do that, Ethan Cole? You could have been killed." Ethan met her eyes. He was just a kid. Something flickered across Valeria's face. An expression that no one in the room had ever seen from her. It vanished in an instant, and she returned to her throne without another word. The reception ended soon after. The human delegation was escorted to their quarters, and Commander Barrett spent an hour questioning Ethan about what had happened. He answered honestly. He had not thought. He had simply acted. Later that night, in her private chambers, Princess Valeria stood at her window and watched the lights of the human ship in orbit. Her handmaiden approached carefully. "Your Highness? Is something wrong?" Valeria did not turn around. "Find out everything about the young one, the human with the gentle hands. I want to know why he is different." The handmaiden bowed and departed. Valeria remained at the window for a long time, thinking about a question she had not asked herself in 300 years. What would it feel like to care about something enough to die for it? The great hall of the Corinthi Palace was filled with noise. Ships from 100 worlds had landed on the golden plains outside the capital city. Princes, warriors, scholars, and leaders from across the galaxy had come for one purpose. They had come to win the hand of Princess Valeria. The selection festival happened once in a generation. The eldest daughter of the Corinthi Emperor would choose a mate from among the galaxy's finest. It was not just a marriage. It was a political alliance that would shape the future of empires. Valeria stood on the raised platform at the center of the hall. She wore robes of silver and blue that flowed like water around her tall, slender form. Her skin was pale lavender, and her eyes were deep violet, like twin moons in a night sky. She was beautiful by any species standards, but her face showed no joy. Only patience. Only duty. Below her, the suitors displayed themselves like peacocks. Prince Tharak of the Veluxi Dominion stepped forward first. He was massive, nearly 8 feet tall, with scales that shimmered like polished metal. His voice boomed across the hall. "I bring you the moon of Selvarus," he announced. "I conquered it myself. 10,000 warriors fell before me. It is yours, princess, as I will be yours." The crowd murmured in approval. A conquered moon was an impressive gift. Next came Lord Vesson of the Thracian Empire. He was leaner, with 4 arms and eyes that glowed yellow. He did not bring a gift. Instead, he demonstrated his combat skills, moving so fast that he seemed to blur. When he finished, 3 training drones lay in pieces at his feet. "My body is my gift," he said. "No harm will ever reach you while I live." More suitors followed. Each one spoke of power. Each one spoke of glory. Each one spoke of what they could conquer, what they could destroy, what they could build. They spoke for hours. Valrea listened to all of them. She smiled when she was supposed to smile. She nodded when she was supposed to nod. But inside, she felt nothing. These males did not see her. They saw her crown. They saw her empire. They saw what she could give them. None of them had asked her a single question about herself. Near the back of the great hall, far from the lights and the glory, stood a small group of humans. Earth was still new to galactic politics. Humans had only made first contact 12 years ago. They were considered a lesser species by most of the galaxy. They were not here as suitors. They were here as observers. Nothing more. Captain Laura Mitchell led the delegation. She was a practical woman with short gray hair and sharp eyes. Beside her stood Ambassador Daniel Price, a career diplomat who understood that humanity's survival depended on making the right friends. And beside them stood Ethan Cole. Ethan was 32 years old. He had brown hair that was slightly too long and kind eyes that noticed everything. He worked as a cultural attaché, a translator of customs and meanings. He was very good at his job. He was also mute. A childhood illness had taken his voice when he was 7. He had not spoken a word since. He communicated through sign language, through written messages, and through a small electronic tablet that he carried everywhere. Most people treated him differently because of his silence. Some treated him like he was broken. Some treated him like he was invisible. Ethan had learned to live with that. He had learned that silence was not empty. It was full of observation. It was full of listening. It was full of seeing what others missed. Right now, he was not watching the princes. He was watching everyone else. He saw how the servants moved through the crowd, their eyes down, their bodies tense. They were tired. They had been working for days to prepare for this festival, and no one had thanked them. He saw how the guards stood at attention, their faces blank, hiding whatever they truly thought about this parade of egos. He saw a young Corinthi girl, perhaps 10 years old, carrying a tray of drinks. She was nervous. Her hands were shaking. As she passed through the crowd, someone bumped into her, and the tray fell. Crystal glasses shattered on the marble floor. The girl froze. Her eyes went wide with fear. Around her, the great lords and princes did not even notice. They kept talking, kept boasting, kept demanding attention. Ethan moved. He walked through the crowd quietly, stepping around the important guests without disturbing them. He reached the girl and knelt beside her. She looked up at him, terrified that she would be punished. Ethan smiled at her. It was a warm smile, a kind smile. He held up his hands and signed a simple greeting. She did not understand the signs, but she understood the kindness behind them. He helped her gather the broken pieces, careful not to cut her small hands. He picked up the tray. He pointed to a side door, suggesting she could get more drinks from the kitchen. The girl nodded, her fear fading. She gave him a small, grateful smile and hurried away. Ethan stood and brushed off his uniform. He did not look around for praise. He did not expect anyone to notice what he had done. But someone had noticed. From her platform, Princess Valraya had watched the entire scene. She had been listening to another suitor drone on about his family's ancient bloodline. But her eyes had drifted to the back of the hall, where she saw a human male kneeling beside a frightened child. She watched him help the girl with gentle patience. She watched him ask for nothing in return. In a hall full of beings who were trying desperately to catch her attention. This one was not looking at her at all. He was looking at a servant girl who had dropped a tray. Something stirred in Valrea's chest. She did not have a word for it yet. When the ceremony finally ended, she stepped down from her platform. Her attendant, an older Corinthi woman named Cirith, approached her. "You seem distracted, Princess," Cirith said quietly. Valrea kept her voice low. "The human delegation. There is a male among them who does not speak. Find out who he is." Cirith raised an eyebrow. "The humans?" "Princess, they are not even here as suitors. They are barely considered a spacefaring species." "I did not ask for your opinion," Valrea said. Her tone was not harsh, but it was firm. "Find out who he is." "The silent one." Cirith bowed and went to do as she was told. Valrea looked across the hall one more time. The human was gone, vanished into the crowd like he had never been there at all. But she would remember him. In a room full of voices demanding to be heard, she would remember the one who had said nothing. The days that followed were filled with noise and spectacle. The suitors competed for Valrea's attention in every way they could imagine. Prince Therak organized a grand hunt in the northern forests. Lord Vesson demonstrated his warriors in a mock battle that destroyed an entire training field. Other suitors brought gifts of rare gems, exotic animals, and ancient artifacts. Each night, there were feasts. Each feast, there were speeches. The suitors stood one after another and spoke about themselves. They spoke about their conquests. They spoke about their wealth. They spoke about the glory they would bring to the Corinthi Empire. Valrea sat through all of it. She smiled. She nodded. She said the words that were expected of her, but she was so tired that she had been prepared for this moment her entire life. She knew her duty. She would choose a mate who would strengthen her people's position in the galaxy. Love was not part of the equation. It never had been. Still, she had hoped that one of them would surprise her. She had hoped that one of them would see her as more than a prize to be won. None of them had thought in her private moments. She found herself thinking about the silent human. Cirith had brought her information. His name was Ethan Cole. He was a cultural attach, a translator of customs and meanings. He had lost his voice as a child. He was not important by galactic standards. He was not powerful. He was not wealthy. He was nobody but he had helped a frightened servant girl when no one else had even noticed. Valrea began to watch him. She watched him during the formal dinners. He sat with the other humans at the back of the hall, far from the high tables. While everyone else talked and laughed and tried to be seen, he observed. He watched the servers and remembered their faces. He noticed when someone's glass was empty. He smiled at the guards who stood for hours without rest. She watched him in the palace gardens. He walked alone in the mornings, before the suitors woke and the chaos began. He stopped to look at the flowers. He sat by the fountains and fed the small birds that gathered there. He seemed completely at peace with his own silence. One afternoon, she saw something that made her heart ache. A young alien child, perhaps 4 or 5 years old, was lost in the palace corridors. The child was crying, calling out in a language that the palace staff did not understand. People walked past, too busy or too important to stop. Ethan found her. He knelt beside the crying child. He could not speak to her. She could not understand his signs. But he did not give up. He pulled out his tablet and began to draw. Simple pictures. A house, a family. A question mark thought the child stopped crying. She watched him draw. She pointed at the picture of the family and nodded. Ethan smiled. He drew more pictures. A map of the palace. Different colored dots. He was trying to figure out where she had come from. It took time. It took patience. But eventually, the child pointed at a spot on his simple map. Ethan took her hand gently and led her through the corridors. 20 minutes later, her frantic parents found them. They thanked Ethan over and over, tears in their eyes. Ethan just smiled and signed something they did not understand. Then he walked away, asking for nothing. Valrea had watched from a balcony above. She had watched the whole thing. And something inside her shifted. The next morning, she arranged a chance encounter. Ethan was walking in the gardens, as he always did. Valrea appeared on the path ahead of him. Her guards started to follow, but she held up her hand and stopped them. Ethan saw her and immediately bowed. It was a respectful bow, but not a fearful one. Valrea approached him. "You are Ethan Cole," she said. "The human who does not speak." Ethan nodded. He pulled out his tablet and typed quickly. The screen showed his words, "And you are Princess Valrea, the woman who must listen to everyone?" She almost laughed. Almost. It had been so long since anyone had said something unexpected to her. "Walk with me," she said. They walked together through the gardens. She spoke aloud, and he typed his responses. It was slow. It was different. But somehow, it felt more real than any conversation she had ever had. She asked him about Earth. He told her about blue oceans and green forests. He told her about cities that glowed at night and mountains that touched the clouds. He told her about humans, their flaws and their hopes, their wars and their dreams. She asked him what he thought of the selection festival. He paused for a long moment before typing his answer. She watched his face as he thought. There was no calculation there. No attempt to say what she wanted to hear. Just honesty. His tablet showed the words. It seems lonely. Being seen by everyone, but known by no one. Valrea stopped walking. She stared at the words on the screen. No one had ever said that to her before. No one had ever acknowledged what this felt like from her side. "How did you know?" she asked quietly. Ethan looked at her with those kind, observant eyes. He typed, "Because I know what it is like to be in a room full of people and still feel alone. Silence teaches you to see what others miss." She felt tears threatening to form. She pushed them back. Princesses did not cry in front of strangers, but he did not feel like a stranger. They talked for another hour. He asked her questions about herself. Real questions. Not about her empire or her power or what she could offer. He asked about her favorite memories. He asked about her dreams. He asked what made her laugh. No one had ever asked her those things. When they finally parted, she touched his arm gently. "Will you walk with me again tomorrow?" Ethan smiled and nodded. That night, the palace buzzed with gossip. The servants whispered. The guards talked. The suitors heard the rumors and grew angry. The princess had spent the morning with a human. Not just any human. The silent one. The one who could not even speak. The one from a species that barely mattered. It was an insult. It was an outrage. It was impossible. But Valrea did not care what they thought. For the first time in years, she had met someone who saw her. Really saw her, and she wanted to see him again. The days that followed changed everything. Every morning, Valrea walked in the gardens with Ethan. Every afternoon, she found excuses to be where he was. Every evening, she thought about the words he had typed on his small tablet. He was unlike anyone she had ever known. The suitors spoke at her. They told her what they wanted. They told her what they would take. They told her what she should be grateful for. Ethan listened to her. He asked what she thought. He asked what she felt. He asked what she dreamed about when no one was watching. She taught him about her people. She showed him the ancient temple where her ancestors were honored. She explained the meaning behind the selection festival, how it had started centuries ago as a way to bring peace between warring species. She told him stories her mother had told her when she was small, He taught her about humanity. He showed her pictures on his tablet of Earth's history, its art, its music. He explained how humans communicated through more than just words. Through touch, through expression, through the silence between sounds. He taught her some basic signs. Hello, goodbye, thank you, beautiful dot. She practiced them when she was alone, moving her hands through the shapes, feeling closer to him even when he was not there. The suitors noticed. They could not help but notice. Prince Tharik was the most furious. He had conquered worlds. He had brought her a moon, and she was spending her time with a human who could not even speak. This is an insult, he growled to the other suitors. She mocks us. She mocks our power. She mocks our offerings. Lord Vesson agreed. The humans are nothing. They are weak. They have no fleet, no empire, no strength. What could that silent creature possibly offer her? The jealousy spread like poison through the palace. The suitors began to treat the human delegation with open contempt. They made comments as they passed. They laughed loudly at jokes about human weakness. Ambassador Price grew worried. He called Ethan to his quarters. This situation is becoming dangerous, Price said. Earth cannot afford to make enemies here. The Corenti have influence across half the galaxy. If we offend them or their suitors, we could be isolated for generations. Ethan listened. His face was calm, but his hands were tense. I need you to step back, Price said. Stop spending time with the princes. Let the festival proceed as it was meant to. We are observers here, Ethan. Nothing more. Ethan's fingers moved over his tablet. And if she asks to see me again? Make an excuse. Stay away. This is not about what you want. This is about what is best for humanity. Ethan sat in silence for a long moment. He understood the ambassador's concerns. He understood the politics. He understood that he was nobody, and she was everything. But he also understood something else. He understood what it felt like to be alone in a crowd. He understood what it felt like to be seen as less than others. And he understood that Velrea deserved someone who would treat her as a person, not as a prize. He typed his response. I will think about it. The next day, Prince Tharik made his move. It happened during a formal dinner. All the suitors were present. The human delegation sat at their usual table in the back. Velrea sat at the high table, surrounded by her family and advisors. Tharik stood and raised his glass. I wish to make a toast, he announced. To the selection festival, to the glory of the Corenti Empire, and to the princess who has shown such patience with all her suitors. He paused. His eyes moved to where Ethan sat, even the least worthy ones. The hall fell quiet. Everyone knew what he meant. Tharik continued, his voice dripping with contempt. I find myself curious about our human friends. They are such a young species. So fragile. So limited. He looked directly at Ethan. Tell me, human. I have heard you cannot speak. Is this common among your kind? Are all humans so broken? The words hit like stones. Some of the suitors laughed. Some looked uncomfortable. The humans at Ethan's table tensed with anger, but they could not respond. They were guests. They had no power here. Ethan stood slowly. The hall grew even quieter. Everyone watched. Even Velrea, her hands gripping the edge of the table, her violet eyes fixed on him. Ethan walked forward. He did not rush. He did not show fear. He walked through the hall with quiet dignity until he stood before Prince Tharik. Tharik smiled down at him. He was twice Ethan's size. He could have crushed a human with one hand. Do you wish to say something? Tharik mocked. Oh, wait. You cannot. Ethan held up his tablet. He typed calmly, his fingers steady. Then he turned the screen so the whole hall could see. The words read, You ask what I can offer the princes, that you cannot. The answer is simple. I can offer her silence when she needs peace. I can offer her listening when she needs to speak. I can offer her someone who sees her, not her crown. You offer her a conquered moon. I offer her the thing that no amount of power can buy. I offer her being seen. The hall was completely silent. Tarek's smile faded. His scales darkened with anger. But before he could respond, Velrhea stood. "Enough," she said. Her voice was not loud, but it carried the weight of her position. "This feast is over. Everyone return to your quarters." She looked at Ethan one more time. Something passed between them. Something that did not need words. Then she turned and walked away. That night, as Ethan returned to his quarters, he found a small note slipped under his door. It was written in careful handwriting. "Thank you for seeing me. I will make my choice soon. And I know exactly who I will choose." Ethan held the note for a long time. He knew what was coming. He knew it would not be easy. But for the first time in his life, someone had seen past his silence. And that was worth fighting for. The selection ceremony began at dawn. The great hall had been transformed. Thousands of candles floated in the air, held aloft by ancient Corinthi technology. Flowers from 100 worlds decorated the walls. Representatives from across the galaxy filled every seat. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. Ethan stood with the human delegation near the back of the hall. His body was wrapped in bandages. His face was bruised and swollen. The palace healers had done what they could, but he still moved like every step caused pain. Captain Mitchell had tried to convince him to stay in bed. He had refused. He had typed 3 words, "I must be there." So here he was, broken, bandaged, and barely standing. But present, the suitors assembled before the throne. There were fewer than before. Some had left after the challenge, unwilling to compete against a human who had shown such stubborn spirit. But many remained. Prince Tarek stood at the front, his scales still gleaming, his posture still proud. He had not spoken to Ethan since the fight. Emperor Korath rose from his throne. His voice carried across the silent hall. For generations, the Selection Festival has brought together the finest beings in the galaxy. Today, my daughter will make her choice. Let each suitor speak their final words. One by one, the suitors stepped forward. Lord Vesson spoke of military might. He promised to make the Corinthi the most feared empire in the galaxy. A Thracian nobleman spoke of wealth. He promised endless resources, endless trade, endless prosperity. Others spoke of bloodlines, of traditions, of power, of glory. Each speech was longer than the last. Each promise was grander than the one before. Finally, it was Tharek's turn. He stepped forward and looked at Velrhea with something almost like hunger. "I have shown my strength," he said. "I have proven my worth. I can give you everything a princess could desire. Power, protection, an empire that spans the stars." He paused. "Choose me, and you will never want for anything." The hall waited. It was clear who the political choice was. Tarek was powerful. His people were strong. An alliance with the Veluxi would benefit the Corinthi for generations. Then Emperor Korath spoke again. "Is there anyone else who wishes to speak?" Silence. No one moved. Then, slowly, Ethan stepped forward. The crowd murmured. He was not supposed to be here. He was not an official suitor. But after what had happened in the arena, no one tried to stop him. He walked through the hall. Each step was painful, but his back was straight. He stopped before the throne and bowed his head respectfully. Then he turned to face Velrhea. He could not speak. But he did not need to. He began to sign, his bandaged hands moving through the air. A translator stepped forward and spoke his words aloud. "I have no armies. I have no conquered moons. I have no wealth to offer your empire. I have nothing that the galaxy considers valuable." He paused, his hands steady despite the pain. "But I can offer you myself. Someone who will listen when you need to speak. Someone who will be silent when you need peace. Someone who will stand beside you when you are tired and never ask you to be anything other than who you are." His hands moved again. "The others have told you what you can give them. I am here to tell you what I can give you. My attention, my patience, my presence, and my promise that I will always see you. Not your crown, not your power. You." He lowered his hands. The translator fell silent. The hall was completely still. Then Valrea stood. She stepped down from her throne. She walked down the steps, past the watching suitors, past the startled guards. She walked until she stood directly in front of Ethan. "For 200 years, suitors have come to this festival," she said. Her voice was quiet, but in the silence, everyone heard. "They came to claim me, to win me, to own me." She looked into Ethan's eyes. "You are the first to simply see me." She reached out and took his bandaged hands in hers. "I have made my choice." The hall erupted. Some shouted in protest. Some cheered. Prince Therek's face twisted with rage, but he said nothing. He turned and walked out of the hall, his guards following behind him. Emperor Korath raised his hand for silence. When the noise faded, he spoke. "My daughter is chosen. The human Ethan Cole will be her consort." They looked at Ethan with those ancient, knowing eyes. "You stood when any other would have fallen. You gave what no wealth could buy. You have earned this, human. Do not make me regret allowing it." Ethan bowed his head. Valrea squeezed his hands. In the days that followed, everything changed. The news spread across the galaxy. A human had won the selection festival. Not through power, not through wealth, not through conquest, through kindness, through courage, through the simple act of seeing another person for who they truly were. Humanity's status shifted overnight. They were no longer a lesser species to be ignored. They were the species that had produced someone worthy of a Corenti princess. Trade offers arrived. Alliance proposals followed. Doors that had been closed for years suddenly opened. Ambassador Price was overwhelmed. Captain Mitchell could not stop smiling. But Ethan did not care about politics. He cared about the woman who sat beside him on the palace balcony, watching the stars come out. Valrea leaned against his shoulder. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "The pain you suffered? The fight you could not win?" Ethan typed on his new tablet. The healers had given him one that was nearly indestructible. "I won," he typed. Maybe not the way they expected. "But I won?" She smiled. "Yes, you did." They sat in comfortable silence. She did not need him to fill the quiet with words. He did not need her to explain what she was feeling. They understood each other in a way that went beyond language. After a while, she spoke again. "The galaxy is watching us. They want to know how this story ends." Ethan thought for a moment. Then he typed, "It does not end. It just begins. Every day, we choose each other again. That is how love works." Valrea read his words. Then she laughed softly. It was a real laugh, full of warmth and joy. He had never heard anything more beautiful. "The silent human," she said. "Who knew you would have so much to say?" He smiled and signed the word he had taught her weeks ago. The word that had passed between them from the very beginning. Beautiful. She signed it back. In a galaxy full of voices shouting to be heard. She had chosen the one who knew how to listen. And in doing so, she had found something that all the power in the universe could not provide. She had found someone who truly saw her, and that was enough. That was everything.